what jurisdiction is left where there's not going to be CRS, where there's not going to be these public beneficial owner registers, where I don't have to register my trustee. And so I started giving it some thought, and I came up with a very unlikely candidate, which is the United States, which often is not thought of as a tax haven, other than Delaware maybe. But the US has some very interesting laws that allow you to set up a US trust, but to treat that trust as a foreign trust for US tax purposes. So as long as that trust doesn't have any US income, the trust wouldn't have any US tax filing obligations, it wouldn't have any US taxes to pay. And I think that this is very beneficial because the US is not a signatory to CRS. There's no public or private beneficial owner registers. The trust documents are completely private, so they're not registered anywhere. Even if somebody tried to get it, they couldn't. They also have relatively easy banking in terms of getting bank accounts compared to the rest of the world. The setup costs are I think, pretty reasonable compared to a lot of the offshore jurisdiction. Many of the US states have drafted specific asset protection trust statutes, which are very, very robust, many of them. They also, in certain states, allow for private trust companies. So if it's an ultra high net worth family that doesn't want to turn their assets over to a professional trust company, they can form a PTC. And the US is also generally a whitelisted jurisdiction when doing international business transactions. I mean, it's very rare that you have a bank question a financial transaction with the US between a US bank and a European bank or a Middle Eastern bank.
I think that the point that Jimmy just made is very true, and I've seen it firsthand how a family's life was turned upside down when public beneficial ownership records came in, and all their neighbours in their small quiet town could see actually they were one of the largest shareholders, one of the largest companies in that country, and they had to install security walls, cameras, the children had to change schools. It had a very huge impact on their lives, information that these people didn't need to know. And I think also we give away a lot of information and more to governments, which we're forced to give. But also, I think coming out of COVID, we've seen people with apps that track your movements and everything. And as Jimmy says, what will government do with all this information? I think we need to sort of keep an eye on it and make sure that governments are using information to protect us. But there is no guarantee that the data, whether it's on ethnic backgrounds, religion, or anything else, could be used by some government for some other purpose. And I think also working from home on more sort of security issue on the privacy side, there is an increased vulnerability because working from home, we use our personal devices more often. We use networks and platforms. Zoom is not always approved of by certain firms and banks because it's supposedly less secure, maybe not. There was a long discussion about BlackBerry and iPhones. So I always thought that's more commercial than anything else. But we are definitely using networks and platforms that may not be as secure as others, and that can lead to increased risk of business information being accessed by other people.